Recently, I've read a bunch of manuscript submissions, and one thing I've noticed is that after a killer first chapter, the tension in a lot of them tended to disappear as the characters wandered through their normal world and/or took the logical steps toward the next major turning point. Any thoughts on this and how to fix it? I do have thoughts on that. One of the things that happens is that people will workshop their first chapter over and over and over again. So the first chapter has just had more attention than the rest of the book. So that's thing one. Thing two is the idea of establishing normal. It doesn't actually take that much to establish normal in order for it to break. So what will happen a lot is that I think what happens to people is that they look at something like the 3-act structure and they think that each act has to be proportional. So they will sit there and try to make an act 1, which takes you up to the point where the character has to like leap into action. They'll try to do something that is proportional to the rest of the story. And that's not what the 3-act structure is about. The 3-act structure is just about describing the turning points, the different mode changes, whether it's a 3-act or a 5-act or a 7-point. So a lot of them have the established normal as one of the recipe pieces. So I think what's happening is that people have received this recipe and they're like, oh, I have to establish normal, but they don't understand how much normal to establish. It is much like if you're cooking and it says season to taste, but people don't actually taste the food that they're making. So I think that that's what's happening. To fix it, there's this great thing, cut out the boring parts. It's like, well, don't write that stuff or edit it afterwards. Like sometimes you do actually need to write it, but think about how little normal you can establish. What I look at is what are the pieces that my readers must understand in order for the rest of the story to not break. And I will sometimes just go through and actually highlight them. Like we have to understand that she's allergic to garlic. We have to understand that that he has a fear of knives. We have to understand that they, when they are standing together, have magical powers. But I don't need a different scene for each of those things. And so I will look at how much can I accomplish in a single scene of normal without overwhelming the reader, but also making sure that I'm actually hitting all of those points. What are your
Yeah, I think that
thoughts?
makes a lot of sense. I think one thing I think about a lot is when it comes to storytelling, human brains love a pattern, right? Like we're little pattern matching machines. It's sort of like how human cognition and thought works. And that works for storytelling too, and you can make that work for you, right? Like, so when you're establishing normal, you don't have to show me all the normal things. You can give me 2 points that are normal, and my brain will fill in the rest, right? Like, leverage your reader's desire to fill in gaps in information to work to your benefit. So you don't have to show me all the normal stuff because, normal stuff by definition is boring, right? Like that's not the part that we're here to engage with. We're here to engage with where it breaks from that, right? So when you are establishing those parts that are normal or expected, make sure they are load bearing for future plot and information, right? And so, I talk also a lot about information density on the page. And in early sections in the book, that information density has to be like through the roof, right? You want to ease up on that as you go a little bit as people settle into your story. But for the first couple chapters, I mean, your opening scene especially has to be like a millefeuille cake in terms of like the number of things you're putting in there. But even in like getting into that first little arc before you sort of hit that turning point of heading deeper into the story, you still need to have quite a bit of density in there in terms of getting in the like, yeah, allergy to garlic, getting in, their magic together or whatever those different pieces are. When you're showing, you can show those in the normal context. Just make sure your normal context is doing the work to set up relationships, stakes, and all of those things, right? And, I think that just sort of gets to the other major thing, which is when you are making that turn away from that killer first chapter and into like the next logical steps, make sure that's not deflating the stakes of the story, right? make sure you're keeping that tension high as they're pursuing that logic. And so, there's a question that we use a lot when it comes to like playing tabletop games like Dungeons and Dragons and things like that, is characters will do a thing or they'll just like come on a story hook and say, well, my character wouldn't do that. And it's like, okay, now this story ground to a halt and this scene is dead and everyone's annoyed and the GM has to scramble. And so the thing that we encourage players to do is stop asking if and start asking why. So it's why not if, right? And so when you're looking at those logical steps, that feels like that is a question of if, when what you should be doing is asking why. Instead, get your character to do the thing that you need them to do, and then sort of backfill from there what their reasoning and logic was to get there. Even if you're standing on the other side and you're like, well, it doesn't exactly make perfect sense that they would do X, Y, Z. Characters aren't perfectly rational. You just need, again, to give enough of the points so that your reader's brain will form a line getting from point A to point B. You don't need to like walk me through every step of their logic getting there.
And I think that the question of why often gets left off the page. And
Yeah.
this is often where tension will drop, is that we don't understand why they're taking an action. We don't understand what the consequences of not taking that action are. And a lot of times the tension comes from but what happens if they fail, and if I don't do it, that can provide the tension for you. So when you're talking about the tension, and a lot of them tends to drop and disappear, it's like, well, what does the character have to be nervous or anxious or concerned about? And it doesn't have to always be the big thing. Like there's we just what did we just watch? We just watched something where the like a spy was attempting to do a thing while also helping their oh no, I know, it was in sorry, there's this great show that I think everyone should watch, called The Residence, which is a murder mystery. The main character is a amazing detective and also a birder. So if you have not watched this, you would enjoy it. Or
you have recommended it to me. I have yet to get around to it, but yeah.
You may hate it also because the birding is very bad. But at the end, this is not a spoiler. At the end, there's this thing where one of the FBI guys is taking a call from someone, and he is with his daughter at an amusement park, sitting on a tiny train as the train is going through, and having to carry on normal dad duties while also talking about murder. And it's kind of awesome. So one of the things that you can do is look at what is a piece of normal that is breaking right now that they have to deal with, while also trying to move towards the big story question.
Well, and also one thing to think about is when it comes to stakes, I think what you were saying about like, it doesn't have to be the big stakes is exactly right. I think people like lean so heavily on the like, but the world will end or you will die if you don't accomplish X, Y, Z. And it's like, it's too big for my brain to care about. My brain is going to care way more about if this little girl is going to be upset that her dad isn't doing a good job of enjoying being on the train with her, right? Yeah. Like that gives us stakes in the moment. And the tension in that scene comes from him not freaking his daughter out while she's trying to have a good time. And in that moment, that's what I'm going to care about. Yeah. And then me caring about that is like a sneak trap for you to feed me all the exposition stuff you need me to pay attention to that I don't want to, right? My brain, I don't want to eat my vegetables. I want to do the fun thing. And the fun thing is watching this kid, on this train or like whatever it is, right? Like we care about relationships more than we care about information. So if you want to get us your information without dropping tension, introduce some stake. It can be really minor, but one that is about how somebody sees the character or feels about the character, and that'll and make that important to the character, right? Make it about a relationship, and I think that will increase the tension in a way that like almost no other trick will. So, I think when I see that sort of deflationary turn when you get to the next scene, I'm like, oh, everyone I cared about left the scene and the characters by themselves, and I don't care about them anymore because no one else cares about them. That's
Yeah.
usually what's happening for me.
The hack that I use myself with this is, you've heard me talk about the mice quotient if you've listened to even one episode of Writing Excuses. Um, so I will look at the scene, and I will look at what my active mice threads are. I'm like, do I have a milieu thread going in this? So am I dealing with navigational stuff or environmental stuff? Do I have any inquiry? Do I have any character? Do I have any event stuff? So I'll look at which ones are active for the whole story, and then I'll check my scene to see which ones are active in the scene. And the number of times that I have checked a scene and been like, oh, whoops,
Hmm.
either there's only one, or sometimes there's not any. Or I'll look at a scene, I'm like, oh, what actually is my character's internal problem here? Do they have a character problem in this scene? No. So that's a useful way for me to check myself, is to just go through and look for it. And then if it's not there, um, then that's an opportunity for me to introduce some additional
Hmm.
tension into the scene.
And again, small problems can be more motivating than big problems,
Yeah.
Martian contingent, or no, not Martian contingent, Thin Man in Space book.
Spare man.
Fair man, thank you. The challenge of having of just trying to get a moment to themselves is so much of the moment to moment stakes and tension in that book is just like, will these two just get 1 second to enjoy being with each other? And the way that you use that tension to pull us through the bigger murder mystery question, it doesn't mean that the stakes of the murder mystery aren't interesting. They are, but like you can use those little ones as like the absolute bait to keep pulling people through the story.
My One of my favorite things that I did in Martian Contingency was, uh I had a scene, and it was a fairly exposition scene. There was a thing that was going wrong. I had this whole strong inquiry thread where I was dropping clues in it. But I looked at it, I was like, I don't have any, like, Elma doesn't actually have any personal stakes in the scene except this question that she's chasing. And so all I did to the scene, I didn't change anything else in it except that I had her arriving with curlers still in her hair, and just
Yeah.
having to remove curlers while she is having to have serious conversation with someone, and
Yeah.
while she is trying to assert herself as, I am a serious person who is in control and command right now, don't mind me while I remove these curlers. It's one of my favorite things that I've done, and it's like, does not affect the overall, it's a micro
Hmm.
tension thing, it's just there. But what it's also doing is it is externalizing her own anxiety about herself and turning it into action and giving me just that little bit of ramp up right there.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's once you learn to spot these little tricks, you'll see them all over like media and fiction, and they're always great. I always love seeing them, and it always adds something to character. It always like rounds somebody out and gives them a sense of like texture and perspective and like depth in a way that's really fun at the same time that like keeps you engaged, as a viewer, audience, reader, whatever.
Thanks for that question.
Yeah, it's a great question.